we are we decided to come tonight because it's the first week of school back, or just around that time for most people, depending on when their schools go back. We've been back a couple weeks now, and I know the UK is just heading back now. And this is the time when all of the perfectionism gremlins are really likely to show up for people. But I know that this is also a topic that's close to our hearts, because this is how you and I bonded, right? So when you and I were at the trainings with Brene Brown, like, this was the topic that was sort of hitting both of us hard personally when we were doing our work. And it's the one that we really started to resonate about Brene's work as applied to parenting. And
No, I remember that. I remember our first conversation about this, like, the idea of a perfect child, and how we are sold, I remember this like as it was yesterday, like, this idea that we are given this child, and this idea that we have to keep it perfect, and I just, my mind exploded, the pressure of that, and how much we buy into that, and not knowingly, to be honest. Well, definitely not, it's not obvious, or at least it hasn't been for me.
That was it. You're right. I remember that conversation. It was the pressure that we got upon, right? Because, it seems like it's just too big of a job to fail. Or to give any less than perfect, right? Like, it's just not, it just doesn't seem like it's possible. So anyway, we wanted to jump on tonight and go live. And thank you for those of you who are listening in. And I hope this is a good time of evening to catch you. We don't do a ton of lives, but we want to do more of them. But the whole term live kind of freaks me out, right? Because it immediately triggers all of my old perfectionism gremlins. So, I think we should just call these like unpolished podcasts or something like that. So welcome to the GPG Unpolished Podcast, the perfectly imperfect podcast.
Okay, cool. Let's go.
Let's go with that. Okay, so Sunil, let's start with you telling us how perfectionism showed up for you in your parenting.
Yeah, and I kind of resonate with two prongs of it. That's I mean, there are more of it, but the ones that show up most often is this: when I compare myself to this idea of the perfect mother. So that can show up quite, if I'm not careful. And then the other one is, if my child struggles, then, and that's how the first time I realized that the perfectionism has showed up, is exactly when my son started school and wasn't doing his homework. And then I was in this, I think that was the first most obvious time when I realized that he was diverging from this, a child that I sort of didn't think consciously. I had lots of expectations of him, but obviously I did, because that is when my perfectionist came out, in kind of not nice ways.
So are those the topics that triggered your perfectionism early on in your parenting? Were they around somehow like performance, in terms of like academic performance specifically, or were there other areas where this kind of creeped up?
Yeah, so I mean, first time I became aware, it was about my son's academic performance. I mean, academic, he was like, 5 or 6. Like, let's just put that into perspective.
That should have been a sign.
I know, but I think this is the one thing that I have learned about perfectionism. It's such a sneaky, really, I don't know, kind of devious foe. So even with all my knowledge and all my inner work that I've done, I did not see that as perfectionism. I saw it as being a good parent. But
So
anyway,
where did it cross over? Because of course, keeping your kids on track, helping them to be successful in school, that is good parenting. So
yeah, absolutely.
where did it cross the line for you from just good healthy parenting to you knew it was perfectionism?
it so that's how I know, by the way, how I cross that line for myself and for the child. Because what has happened for me is that the way my perfectionist showed for me, which was very self-critical, like in a hustler, then that I externalized onto my child. So that perfectionism, so it was the same voice, same self-critical voice, because perfectionism and self-criticism, they are very, at least for me, they come very closely together. And so I became very not so much kind of overtly critical, because I'm smarter than that. So I'm aware, and I try to say the right things. But there was, I had this critical eye. When you look at your child and you kind of look for what's missing. And it pains me to say that, but that's how it shows up. That is that as I said, I didn't see it until I've done more work on perfectionism and started to recognize it, that actually it was that it was I become too invested. It becomes very much like, life and death thing, disproportionately so. Yeah. And then too critical, I can't, it's sort of like, it's never enough. You just constantly think about other things that you could do to make things better, to better the person, better the circumstances, better the this and that. So that's for me. So and how about you?
It's funny, Sanella, because we've had so many conversations about perfectionism. Each time I hear you describe it, I understand it better from your perspective. We talk about this in our programs, right? Really trying to understand somebody else's world as they see it, and we can't, because we have our own kind of lens on. You have yours. You see the world one way, but when I hear you describe it, each time you put words around it, I start to understand what perfectionism felt like and looked like for you. And I think I thought it was the same for everybody. You and I definitely related to it both, but when I heard like how it showed up for you, and then I was describing how it showed up for me, I'm like, what? Are they the same? I don't know if they're the same. So for me, it was, I felt it was more obvious. I don't know if I want to say the word obvious, but it was more typical in that, like, the way I put myself together, the way I put my children together in terms of dressing, right? And so in my younger years, like, always hair, makeup done before you leave the house. You don't go outside in your sweatpants unless you're actually going to do, athletics. Like this is.
I can relate to that.
Oh, okay. So that one sounds familiar. But like I would never have like been caught dead, like out somewhere without, full face, and I wasn't overly made up, but still, like, it had to be. And if something was going wrong, I might let somebody know I was flustered by something, but then there was always followed by the quick comment of like, oh, but it's fine, and this is what I'm going to do to sort it all out, and it was just always okay. So that quick rush to make everything look polished on the outside, to manage the physical appearance, as well as this outward perception of how I was managing life. And that extended to when I had, my first baby, and then he had to, wear the little matching outfits, and then, I always, wiped the snotty nose and the cleared the eyes, and like, flatten the hair, and like, I mean, the poor kid.
I'm sorry. That's just so sweet.
I know, you just have to laugh at it, but it was exhausting, right? Because how many runny noses do kids have? And you can't keep that looking that good, right? And this is when it all finally cracked, was when I had my second, because I had to keep myself together. Then I had to keep up appearances around how our family looked, and then I, with the baby, and how the baby, because that's somehow a projection of how I was faring as a parent. And that I wasn't failing, no, I was, I wasn't struggling. I didn't want to be, I didn't think I was failing, but I didn't want to be seen as struggling either. that was even not okay, because, I was kind of type A, and I had done my research, and I had read the books, and I had them. And I, just like I had had everything in my life, university, first job, da, 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 like, early in my career, like, this stuff was rewarded. Like, when
Oh
you get
yes,
your
yeah,
stuff
absolutely.
together at work,
Mm,
right? Like,
mm,
everybody wanted to invite me onto projects and to work with them.
mm, mm.
I was the one who, like, could be on the phone typing the minutes of the meeting, and everybody had the minutes of the meeting in their inbox before they hung up the phone.
That's why I like working with you.
And,
But
now I
tell me
know.
something. Tell me something. So when you're describing that, so I relate to that, but I can also see my mum in that. So like that out, and also culturally, um, there, I come from Bosnia, and the kind of Balkans, and sort of that culture of what other people think, like, that is massive. Like, I don't know how it's in the US, and I think it's, there's everywhere of that. But I think, um, especially our parents' generation grew up with that. So, and I think part of my rebellion, where we sort of, kind of see that our experience is different. So part of my rebellion was that outwardly appearance, like, that, like, being totally polished, I will rock on, at the front gate, for a pickup or drop off. Like, I don't care. Like, if I'm made up, like, good for you. If I'm kind of just washed my face and showed up, good for, I kind of let that go. But I think that was a rebellion. But what I have done is that I've internalized, like, I have, when you talk about that, I'm thinking, where is my external? Who am I trying to? Whose perception am I trying to, to kind of manage? Because that's what we do with perfectionism. We are managing other people's
Exactly.
perception of us, and trying to sort of put that, I'm okay. As you said, I'm okay. I nothing to see here. Everything, everything is
Yeah.
tickety-boo. Yeah. Um, but mine was, so I think I internalized, and I've also made it up. I kind of constructed this perfection of from many places, and I have seen that in my clients as well. Like, when you actually ask, if you ask me, like, so what do you want? What are you aiming for? What are you measuring yourself against? There was like loads of stuff, and when I eventually done that, it's just like, there is no such a person. Like, you got do you know what I mean? Like, it's so disproportionately perfect that, when I've actually done that exercise at Brené's course, I was like, oh wow, this is funny, nobody can live up to that. So
Yeah.
bringing that to awareness was a very, very useful for me. But I think what I'm hearing both of us, and this is, our experience is very different, is what did that whole kind of, trying to do all of these things, what did that cost you?
I mean, my sanity, and almost my family. If it had
Okay.
kept going, for sure, my marriage. Like, I
Wow.
mean, who can tolerate that, right?
Mm,
Constant, like, my coach at one time called it, covering over the cracks. He's like, how long have you been covering up the cracks? Like,
wow.
okay, literally with the makeup, right? But then,
Mm,
not letting anybody see that there were problems or struggles or flusters, right? And
mm,
um, I think it caused me, like, I just constant fatigue, Smella, like
mm,
physical fatigue. That's
yeah.
why, you were talking about the criticism. You really recognize this critical voice,
Mm, mm,
alongside your perfectionism. And I'm sure it was there because, of course, how did I know how to clean up and fix up, right? Because
yeah.
there was, previous to that, there was some voice that said,
Mm,
the way you currently look is not okay, or the way things currently look are not okay.
yeah. Yeah.
So somewhere there was a criticism, but that's not the part that was burdening me, because I didn't even,
Mm,
that was so internalized, so part of my process. I didn't even hear that.
okay.
That was
Yeah.
so automatic that
Yeah.
only
Yeah.
thing I observed was the running around to try to fix whatever that critical
Okay.
voice was
Okay.
talking about. And so I never let anything fall through the cracks,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
I had the grocery list done, and I had the lunch boxes set, and I had the dentist 2 times a year, and my doctor's appointment once a year, and I had this going on, and I had the bake sale and the neighborhood cake sale and whatever, and I had it all. But what it took to create and keep all that up without letting anything fall through the cracks, it was like a Herculean effort, and I could only keep it up to a point. And that's why I said, when I had my second son, I'm like, it was unsustainable.
Yeah.
It was
Okay.
unsustainable.
Yeah. Yeah. And okay, that's I think I sort of definitely have done, and still, if I fail to notice the critical voice, then I do into doing. And the last time I did that, because I kind of suddenly was in some sort of panic that my kids are not exercising enough, and there is whatever, and I booked Sophie to do swimming. We haven't yet went there. It
You
was
didn't
just,
go.
we never, I mean, she didn't want to go, but it was that sort of, I relate to that sense of I have to do something. I'm feeling this sense of not good enoughness of that I have to. I'm going to perfect that bit. I'm going to sign us up to different stuff.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
swimming was one of
I know
them
how to
that
fix
actually
this.
never happened.
Yeah. Okay. That's a sign. So,
Yes. Yeah.
you know what, Sonali, your question, now that I'm really reflecting on it, what did it cost me?
Mm.
I'm thinking back to the moment when we're at Brené's program and we're doing this training, right? And we're getting taken through these deep exercises. And what I realized was that perfectionism, I was doing it because I was trying to make this polished presentation of myself that the world would find acceptable. I thought, right, well, people will want to work with me. They'll want to be friends with me. That whatever I, back in the back of my brain thought, this was how I was going to connect and bond with people. And when I learned, actually, when I read in her book, Daring Greatly, for the first time, that people don't bond over connection. People don't connect over perfection, right? They don't bond over perfection. It actually pushes people away.
Yeah.
Because when you see somebody who's got it all polished, you don't relate to that because everybody knows inside that they're messy. So actually what it cost me was connection. It cost me connection.
100%.
And I then was left with lots of very superficial relationships in my life. And had I kept going, that's exactly the relationships I would have had with my kids.
Wow.
Right?
Okay, I've got goosebumps now. Yeah, that is the absolutely, when you see that the pain that you're causing to yourself, and then the pain that can the suffering for that relationship, and in my case the kind of the projecting of that critical voice and onto my child, that is really hard to actually realize. And even now, I'm kind of thinking, oh, that was really hard. I think the other thing that I can relate with, the kind of the cost of that perfectionism is that when we have that, when we sort of keep everything together, and when we put that perfectionism in our families, in the family unit, they don't see us, they don't get to know us, we don't get to know them if we put that veneer of perfectionism onto the child, and that disconnection that you're talking about, they're just painful. And that's the problem. And the other cost for me has always been that, when you walk around in the world, in your family, being this somebody, like this perfect somebody, that love that you receive from others, you can't get it. You can't actually take it in, because you constantly think, because that that's just a front, how messy you are,
You
and
don't
then you
feel
kind
like
of
you
think,
really earned it
no,
because
because
you
the
don't feel like you
perfect
really
one
earned it.
earned it. the perfect one got it, and you kind of know, well, if they only, when they find out how fallible I am, how messy and whatever, not together I am, they will not, they will obviously they will run away. Otherwise, so I think that is that disconnection. That's the ultimate price, and we disconnect, and you can never. Because why do we put that perfectionism? We put it because we want to feel good about ourselves. But because, we can't fill that gap, that void, because it's not us who is, who's performing. There's that perfect veneer who's doing all the thing, like, this being separated, the real me, the messy, the fallible me, lovely me, but and the perfect me.
Going back to what you said about, that our family doesn't really see the real us. They don't get to really know the real us. And I would add to that, they don't get to help, love, or support us either. Because in the height of my perfectionism, was also the height of my unwillingness to accept help from others.
Yes.
Right? Because that didn't fit in.
No.
And that was, when I realized through, a lot of work and the grace of a lovely coach, who gently, pushed me to appreciate the fact that, people helping us is how they show their love for us.
Yeah.
And every time somebody says, do you need help? Can I help you? And, we want to keep it all together. So we're like, no, I got it all together. It's like I'm turning away a gift of love. Somebody's offered me, would you like this love? Can I love you? Can I care for you? And I'm saying, no, thanks.
Thank you. I love you. If you need help, I love you. That's no problem. But, don't. Can't
I
we
had to
do
make
that?
that connection. And I have to say, understanding it, like realizing that the perfectionism that I was using to try to get connection was actually getting me the opposite. It was keeping me out of connection. And this concept that, what I really wanted most is, more love and more genuine relationships in my life. And that the way was to let people see the messy me and to let them help the messy me. And it's been such a beautiful journey ever since. It's been so much lighter. And thanks to the work we did with Brene and her research, I now have some ways of knowing and catching myself when I'm
I think, I think that's definitely the personal work, that understanding that, knowing how it shows up, understanding that the triggers, what that looks like for me, and kind of being able to name it. It's half of the battle. And then being, naming that when I do that with my kids as well, and kind of letting it's, and I have to say, it's a constant awareness and constant commitment to actually not go down that road, because it is very seductive. It's very, very seductive
that's the right word
to
for
do
it.
that.
Seductive. It's,
Very
when Brene refers to it as an addiction, right? She calls it a process addiction, right?
Because,
you try to perfect. And this is when I really recognized myself in her work, is when she said, it's a process addiction, and that you really try to perfect everything. And if it doesn't work, your initial thought is not, oh, that perfection stuff doesn't work, it's not worth it. No, your thought is, oh, no, I wasn't perfect enough. And that was me. I'm the double downer. Like, I'm just going to double down on that perfectionism next time, because clearly I just missed something, right?
Missed something, absolutely. And you know what I've noticed, kind of this, and again, like, not everything is perfectionism, but on social media today, I've noticed that, parents who are having working from home, maybe running businesses from home, so like, having kids at school is a massive kind of I mean that's definitely true for me. Like, you know, it's you get your routine back, and then there's a lot of talk about like people feel, you know, mothers feeling or parents feeling guilty about actually feeling this
Joy.
sense of like, you know, joy and relief, and kind of, and that is also this that is this idea of a perfect mother that we have to you know, deconstruct and be really, really mindful, like, you know, because we internalize these messages and compare ourselves. So like, you know, if I'm feeling, you know, can I love them and also feel okay, you know, feel joy and relief that they gone to do their things, you know, is that compatible? Am I a bad mother? And you can kind of, you know, and especially if they're having a tough time, and do you know what I mean, like, you know, you can get yourself into all sorts of, you know, mind twists, that, you know, but a bit of awareness and thinking about those things is so helpful, to not go there.
So let's leave all these
Yes.
beautiful souls who have joined us tonight. Thank you so much, by the way, for everybody who's joined in, and we're waving right back at you. So now leave them with you know, give us a nugget. What have you learned in terms of your perfectionism when it creeps up? Either how you know it, do you have a you know, how you know it's there, what's your signal, or what's your go-to strategy to get yourself to kind of let go of it again?
My first signal is critical inner voice,
Right.
for sure. And that could be critical when I become very critical of others, of my kids or my husband. So that's the first one. What about you?
Yeah. Well, I'm now, thanks to our work together and you calling out that critical inner voice, I'm noticing it more and more in myself. So I'm in still the very uncomfortable stages of hearing it, because it used to be fatigue, right? I'm like, I'm just so tired trying to keep it all together. I must be stuck in perfectionism, but that's like pretty far down the road, right? If I think if I can even catch it at the critical voice stage, I might be, you know, a step earlier in the game. I can
Yeah.
share with you what's most helped me in terms of letting go is when I'm spending a lot of time on something, I have to like double check. I'm like, okay, is this healthy striving? Like, am I
Yes.
doing this for a good reason? You know, because it's worthy of this extra effort and I'm gonna do my best? Or is it perfectionism? When, you know, have I flipped? And I think, you know, through Brené's work, to hear that, being able to ask myself this question, is this internal validation or is this for external validation?
Yeah,
Is
absolutely.
doing this extra work, going this extra mile, going to help win somebody over out? It might even, as you said, be that invisible person, or is there actually somebody there? If
Yeah.
it's no, I want to do it because like this is going out, it's got my name on it, and I really feel like if I spend another half an hour more, it's going to be a better product. It's going to be it's going to be more valuable to somebody. Then that's worth it. That's healthy striving. But if I'm doing it thinking, oh, I saw what somebody else was doing and mine's not as good yet, then I'm
Yeah.
squarely
Time
in
to go.
perfectionism and it's time to pull the plug.
Yeah, and that 100%. I love those questions, and for my kids, because you know, at the beginning you said like, you know, when do we know, you know, when we are good parents and you know, doing the being of service to our kids, and when do we kind of stride into perfectionism? And I have to, when I notice the sort of resistance in them, I have to then ask myself, am I doing this? Am I asking this of them so that I feel better?
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean that I feel better, you know, more secure about, you know, their future, maybe, you know, my vision of who they should be. So I kind
Yeah.
of need to constantly wrestle with those questions. Am I doing that for myself to feel better? Or is this truly in service of them? And that is, you know, it is you can have a good glass of wine and think about that.
Yeah, right. Well, what I noticed in there were the shoulds, right? So maybe shoulds are a telltale sign. for certain, right? Anytime you're like, well, I should do this, or we should do that, or the children should be doing that, we should be taking those swimming lessons.
Yes.
Good. Nella, thank you for
Fabulous.
jumping on and
Thank
for
you.
sharing tonight on our unpolished podcast. I'm going to totally adopt that term. It's so much, it gives me so much more permission to show up and be messy than going
I love that
live
podcast
on Instagram. Too much pressure.
That's cool. I just wanted to ask if anyone has any questions. I see a lot of people are here, and thank you so much for being here. But if anyone has a question that wants to ask that we can tackle now, or
yeah,
I don't know where. Oh, hello, Daniela.
I think I saw Rosanna on here earlier too.
I think
still here. Thank you for joining, Rosanna.
Fabulous. Well, we'll love you and leave you then.
Yeah, we will. But this is not the last of the perfectionism, right? So we are in the works with putting together a short online course for perfectionism to try to help people bring some of these thoughts and concepts into their world, to kind of release them from the grips and the pressure.
I think it's such a big part of our parenting journey to get rid of that.
Yeah, and in service of everybody, gets us to that connection.
Totally. Fabulous.
Okay,
have a lovely night.
You too. Take care.
Thank you, Terri. Bye.
Bye.